This video is about a very important topic to me, and this is going to be the first in a series of videos that I'm actually going to make about industrial hemp. This shirt I'm wearing right now is made 100% from industrial hemp fibers. The company that printed this is called Recreator. They're based out of Los Angeles. Really stand-up group of guys. They've been a huge help to myself and to the California Hemp Foundation and Alliance. Now, I am a graduate student at Cal Poly Pomona. I'm pursuing a master's degree in plant science and agricultural science, and the focus of my thesis and my study is actually the cultivation of industrial hemp. And we at Cal Poly Pomona, located right about here on the map of our great state, are going to be the first university in California to grow industrial hemp in a pilot program pursuant to Section 7606 of the 2014 Farm Bill. I know that's a lot of legalese I just touted out there, and even though I'm an agriculture student, I'm really a plant guy. A lot of this project, a lot of it has been legalese wrangling and reading through legal briefs and consulting with lawyers because there's a huge, I don't even know how to address that with what's going on with the legal status of hemp. But the point of this video is to tell you about hemp and what makes it important, what separates it, just to educate a little bit. Now, botanically, scientifically, the plant is called Cannabis sativa. There is actually a lot of disagreement among some botanists and some biologists as to whether Cannabis sativa is the only species within the genus, or if indica and ruderalis should also be classified as separate species of the cannabis plant. The main thing that undermines classifying them as separate species is the fact that all three of them can interbreed. And interbreeding, breeding across species lines is usually a sign that there isn't a species line to begin with. So there are some that would classify indica and ruderalis as subspecies of sativa, along with the also now defunct Cannabis afghanica. Now, there is an enormous diversity in the Cannabis sativa uh, genome because it has a very, very long history of human cultivation. There are some archaeologists who would argue that cannabis was the first cultivated, domesticated plant known to man. There's documented evidence of us cultivating it as long as 10,000 years ago. And the diaspora of humans coming out of, I believe, the origins of cannabis sativa was what is now Southeast China. The huge diaspora of humans cultivating it is what led to an enormous specialization in its traits. And some plants over time began to develop higher amounts of THC. THC being the active intoxicating ingredient in uh, in cannabis, the so-called narcotic content. Now, this is for a different video, but there's a lot of arguments for and against THC having medicinal value, but it is not the only active ingredient within cannabis. However, it is the intoxicant. Now, historically, marijuana plants, as they're called, plants that have enough THC to be intoxicating, have had anywhere from 5 to 8, maybe 10% of THC. However, in the past 40 or so years of intensive breeding of marijuana plants, of hybrid vigor from different strains from all over the globe being crossbred in Northern California and in other places like Amsterdam, we've now gotten to strains of high-grade cannabis that can have up to 30% THC content, which is incredibly high. Now, on the flip side, industrial hemp is legally defined as a cannabis sativa plant with 0.3% THC or less in its plant mass. Which, if cannabis in the 60s, which was fairly mild to today compared to what's around today, had 8%, you can imagine how non-intoxicating and ineffective a cannabis plant with 0.3% THC would be. So industrial hemp is just that. It's used for industrial purposes. There is the grain, which the cannabis plant produces an enormous amount of these seeds, which are more comparable to nuts because they're very high in fats and proteins, and that is the primary hemp product that those of you on the fringes, well, maybe not the fringes, but those of you with a keen interest in healthy eating would know about, because hemp has been, a leading health food in the health food markets in, kind of like the hippie stores for, gosh, 10, 12 years now, if not more, probably closer to 18, because it's been legal to import hemp seeds and stuff well above the board as a food item since 1996. And then there's the more well-known traditional uses of hemp, which is for making fibers. The hemp fiber is one of the strongest natural fibers in the planet. There was a time when all of the ships of sail were rigged with hempen ropes and had hempen sails. So that's the key difference there. The big thing to remember about hemp versus marijuana versus cannabis is that hemp and marijuana are cannabis. Cannabis is not always hemp, and cannabis is not always marijuana. It's like saying a Doberman is a dog, but just because it's a dog doesn't mean it's a Doberman. A dog can be a poodle, a dog can be a pug, a dog can be a terrier, or an F-150 is a Ford, but a Ford isn't always an F-150. A Ford can be a Fusion, it can be a Mustang, it can be any number of things. So cannabis, sativa is the botanical name. It's just like, that. This is kind of an aside here, but this enormous diversity that you see here in the cannabis plant, because having high THC or not high THC is just scratching the surface of the different traits that the plants can have, because there are hundreds of different active chemicals within the cannabis plant besides THC, which is the active intoxicant. There's CBD, which is really being hailed as somewhat of a panacea, a very important medicinal and therapeutic supplement. There's a half a dozen other cannabinoids that stimulate the endocannabis system, which, again, different video for that. And then there are all the phytoterpenoids. And, part of the diversity of the cannabis plant is the different ratios and balances between all of these terpenoids and all of these cannabinoids. And then there as well, does it have a propensity for branching? Does it have a propensity for growing straight up? How tall does it grow? How thick do the stalks get? How large do the seeds get? And for all this diversity of traits I just talked about within the cannabis sativa plant, that also exists for all the other plants that are in cultivation that we know of. We know of an apple as just some red delicious, thing of sugar. But there's literally hundreds and hundreds of different apples that have been cultivated throughout history and have been sold in markets, and then thousands and thousands more if we go beyond the history of the United States. We only know the banana as this Cavendish, yet there are short bananas, there are really fat round bananas, there are burro bananas, there's a type of banana called apple banana, which has a really pronounced nipple. And it's just kind of like a soapbox moment for me, because through commerce and domestication, we've really eliminated so much of the diversity, even from the species of plants that we cultivate. And cannabis is in some ways a microcosm of that. And because it hasn't been fully, completely legally commercialized and corporatized, that process hasn't happened yet, but it's going to. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been enlightening, and I'm going to have many more about the many different uses of hemp, and I'll likely have some other videos about the enormous diversity of the plants that we cultivate as well. This is Tony DeVera. I'm signing off. West Coast.